Hey, what is going on, guys? Welcome to Victims and Villains. It's been a couple of weeks since we've gone live here on Twitch. I hope you guys have all had a fantastic, healthy couple of weeks since we've been taking this break. This is a very special episode that I'm excited to bring to you guys. Um, but just before we go ahead and get started, this episode is brought to you guys by our Horrific Hope Film Festival sponsors, Hard Talks and Hard Hats. You have to watch this podcast, Fierce Literature, and Ride the Omnibus podcast, all of which you guys can find information and links to, along with all of this year's film festival lineups in the descriptions below. But I'm Captain Nostalgia, and on this episode, I am joined by a plethora of talent behind the film Just Like You, Anxiety and Depression. My first guest to my right. I'm doing everything via how I'm seeing it on my screen. So she's on my right. Her name is Hillary Phillips, and she is the producer of this film, as well as the mother of a unfortunate. Her son committed suicide during the process of filming this. She also sees the nonprofit, the the-pierson-project, Miss Hillary Phillips.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hello. Thanks for being here. Next up, I have below me is Miss Abby Eden. She is a anchor, and we're gonna get into how she ties into this. Let it be a little bit spooky, build the anticipation. How are you doing tonight?
Doing fine. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. And our last guest is the CEO, founder, and as well as the filmmaker behind the film we're here talking about tonight. She is the writer, producer, editor, and director, Miss Jen Greenstreet. How are you doing, Jen?
Good. How are you, Josh?
I am well. And before we go ahead and get started talking about this movie, which I'm going to throw this out here right in the beginning, we're probably going to talk about it many times throughout the course of this. You guys can actually find this movie right now on Apple TV. It's available to rent on Apple. So my main question is, can you kind of give us a elevator pitch of what Just Like You is as a organization?
Sure. So Just Like You Films is a Mid-American winning woman-run nonprofit film production company, and we make films for kids that live with unique circumstances like severe burn injuries, anxiety or severe burn injuries, Down syndrome, autism, facial anomalies, type 1 diabetes, anxiety disorder and depression with this film. And we're currently in production on a film for kids that live with severe food allergies.
It's so awesome to kind of hear that. And how did you guys got to get started producing these types of movies or wanting to make documentaries like anxiety and depression?
Yeah, so it actually all started. I actually began my professional career as a prosecuting attorney, which is not the normal route to filmmaker. But I was transitioning from being a prosecutor, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And my 10-year-old daughter at the time, that was 15 years ago, was really good friends with a little girl that was severely burned on her leg. And Caroline had a wonderful experience at our local children's hospital here, and she wanted to raise money for the hospital. And she asked her mom to kind of get together a group to do that. And they asked me to become involved in it. And we went down to the hospital and we spoke with the child life specialist there. Her name is Nikki Stang Johnson. And the idea that the girls had at the time was to make pajama bottoms. But Nikki said, we have so many pajama bottoms. What I really need is a film. I need a film that does what I do. And she at the time was serving as a school reentry child life specialist. So when when Caroline went back to school after she had her burn injury, Nikki would go with her into the classroom and explain what Caroline had been through and tell them, okay, Caroline has a scar on her leg and it covers the full length of her leg. but she's still the same kid as she was before she was burned. She's just going to have to do a few things and kind of just ease their concerns and kind of allay their fears and help them understand what Caroline was going through so they could be a better friend. So we did that first film for our local children's hospital here, and that one ended up winning an international award. So the cancer unit came to us and said, we heard that you guys did this film. Would you be willing to do another one? And then the Down Syndrome Guild came to us, and it became apparent very quickly that these films were very needed by kids that live with unique circumstances. So we decided to go ahead and create a nonprofit around it. And 15 years later, here we are. We have 12 films. They've been seen all over the world. Millions of times, and we're distributed on many distribution channels. So it's kind of how we got started. It's very organic.
I love that. I truly do. You never know where creativity strikes. I always tell people that we got started into podcasting because I myself was really bad into depression, and I needed a platform to reconnect to friends that I desperately needed in my life at that time. And 6 years later, here we are having open conversations about mental health and doing it through fandoms most times, and it's been a really interesting and wild ride. But what I loved about this, thank you. What I loved about this film, this is kind of my introduction to you guys as a film company, is that you just kind of left the film feeling like it was okay not to be okay, and that you're not alone. And I love the fact that it was so reassuring. And Hillary, you got specifically, like, I feel like you have how did you kind of get involved with this? Because I know that we were talking a little bit before we started recording, but I'm wondering if you can kind of talk about how you got involved with this project.
Well, honestly, I think it was through Maria Stonestreet, who's also a producer, an executive producer on this film. My son, like I said, was a speaker. And I think, Abby, I believe it was at the Speak Up Walk.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
When he was in 7th grade, he was a speaker at their walk for suicide prevention. And I think that's how we ended up just kind of connecting with everyone with Just Like You Films. He did the anti-bully pledge, but he was a kid who thought it was very important to have people. I think it was one of his quotes is, "We need people like us, living like us, to talk to us about us." And so the films that Just Like You makes are so important because it's from the child's viewpoint. And I think that's something that a lot of us forget. And my first experience with the movies was at the Diabetes Type 1 premiere. So watching a movie about something that I thought I understood, but seeing it from a child's perspective, even though I was a mom who was helping her child try to explain what it was like for him living with a mental illness and suicidal thoughts, it really got me watching that. I was just really impressed because it's not just one disease or disorder that we need to listen to these children. Their viewpoint actually matters in so many ways, and what they experience, we can kind of brush off for certain things. There was one instance in that movie where one of the girls didn't get a piece of candy in the classroom, and she went and asked her teacher, why didn't I get one? And she said, "Oh, because you have diabetes, you can't have it." And that wasn't actually the case, but she felt so very left out. And it was just very interesting to me. I think it's an amazing premise. It helps kids understand other kids. It helps adults understand. We forget what it's like to be, a kid, and what it feels like to be in that social situation. So that's how we got started with it. And then Pearson was cast as a cast member in the film. And then he passed away. He died by suicide in January, right before, I think, filming. We had already gotten the script. So it was going to be starting soon. So it just I think it disrupted everything for a little bit. So yeah, it's kind of how we got started with it.
I always want to emphasize this. Like, I've talked about this several times because part of my mental health advocacy, it was also losing someone to suicide. I went through, obviously, I've been through depression, I've been through anxiety. I still struggle with those things on a day-to-day basis, but also it's once you lose someone to suicide, it's like your entire world kind of gets turned upside down. And I can't imagine what it's like as a mother.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
to experience such a pain like that.
I'm a really good actress. That's what I keep saying. I've had some clients that I've shown parts of the film to, and I don't think any of them have ever seen me so, how do I put it? I'm really good at pretending that I'm okay. And so in the movie, when they show us holding his picture, and I didn't quite realize how much of that they got. I think I made a joke about emoting. I'm going to emote for you, and I just let all the emotions kind of come out. But I'm really good at I mostly do that at home. My son was in 8th grade when he died, so we have a lot of young people that were close to him that I try to keep safe. We try to do this in a safe way for them as well, because they were very affected. They were very affected by this as well. So it's like you said, losing someone close to you affects you. So it's not just me, it's these kids, and I have better tools to handle things than they do. So I let them see me more now that they've gotten older, being more vulnerable about it. They know I'm sad, they know I miss them, but for them to see me break down when they were 13, 14 years old, that was really hard for them. So I cry every day.
I mean, it's okay to cry.
Yeah.
And I guess I kind of want to open these questions up to all of you, all three of you. Is like, there's a lot of misconceptions that I think that even being someone that does a podcast like this and does mental health work for what feels like a full-time job, I had a lot of conceptions about anxiety a little bit, and that's one of the things that I really like that this film does. It breaks it down, and I think a large portion of why it breaks it down, it kind of shakes a lot of those misconceptions. And one of the things that I've found in doing mental health is that there's people think that something like anxiety or depression, that it's just something that exists within like teenagers. Like once you kind of hit a certain age, like you just kind of shake it off, and it's kind of like growing growing into puberty or whatever have you. Like you hit that certain age and it's like boom, oh, I don't have it anymore. And it's like, no, I'm 31 and I still have those days where I just get random anxiety attacks. And I'm wondering if you guys can talk about really shaking the misconceptions that anxiety has, that we as a society have, and how your film specifically does that.
Well, I think one of the things that you learn as you get older and go through a whole bunch of life experiences is that anxiety and depression aren't static. They ebb and flow and can change, and your status, your mental health status, can change as you go through life. And so, I it's something that you can have days where you're fine, or you can have months where you're fine and you're not going through something, and then something may trigger a panic attack, something may trigger something that makes you more depressed for whatever reason, and your whole mental state can change. And so I think, in my experiences, I've had people say, oh, well, for example, your postpartum depression is over, right? I mean, you had your kid however many years ago, and now you're fine. And it doesn't necessarily work like that. You're not just automatically fine necessarily. Some people are, some people aren't, but it changes. And so I think that's one thing that I've learned the more I've gone through life. It's not like the flu. Like, you don't necessarily just get over it forever. And I think that's something that the film addresses as well, that it's something people can learn to live with and treat the symptoms. It can be something you learn to live with, but it's hard and it's a struggle every single day. And yeah, I guess that's my perspective on it. Is it's something that that it changes.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, my son had days where he was fine, and then he had days where he wasn't. I too have anxiety and depression, and one of the big differences as an adult, I've learned how to manage that better, but it was easier for me to learn how to do that because my child was living with it. So it was just easier to take that time to do all the work, because it's work. There's not a special pill that just magically solves it all. It's not that simple. But it's really hard, I think, and I don't know if Abby can agree with me on this or not, it's when other people around you don't understand what it is. I get a lot of things like, it's just a lot of drama. You're just overreacting. You're just, whatever. It's really hard. That was one of the things with my son. I noticed a lot of his teachers and people at his school did not believe that it was real. They thought he was faking it, which I found absolutely, I was completely gobsmacked by that, because this kid got on a stage and spoke. And I'm like, why would I let my kid do that if this wasn't real? But I find it definitely more with girls. People automatically react with it's drama. They're just doing this. And the film really does approach that with, I think, Regina and Rashawn, especially as a mom, saying, I thought he was manipulating me. And, how she just didn't really understand it. So I think that this film really does break down some of those barriers of this is real. It's not just something people are doing to control somebody else, or, I had days my son could not function and he couldn't go to school. It was just too much. He couldn't do it. So, and it does ebb and flow. It's like, you just don't know. You don't know what's going to trigger it.
Yeah. And what's funny is, when Kathy Donovan came to me with this idea, and she said, Jen, would we ever make a movie about anxiety disorder and depression? And I said, well, yeah, I love that idea, but we've always made movies about medical conditions. And are those really medical conditions? And she said, yeah, yes, they are. And you saying that is exactly why we need to make this movie, because I realized once I got into the project that I myself was part of the problem in the way that I treated anxiety and depression, and my kids, when they would become anxious or sad, or when I myself would be anxious or sad, I did not treat it like, my son has severe asthma, for example. If he was having an asthma attack, I would drop everything and console him and tell him, it's okay. You don't have to go to school. I'm going to call the doctor. I'm going to try to get you medicine. But if any of my kids were having an anxiety attack or feeling depressed, I would say, hey, we're late. Get it together. Come on.
Yeah.
Suck it up.
Let's go. Suck it up. Yep.
Yeah. What's wrong with you? And then what would happen, it would inflame the situation, and it would get worse and worse and worse until it was completely out of control. And so when I started talking to the subjects in the film and learning more about that it was a medical condition, that I should treat it as such, I tried it at home with my own kids, and it was like magic. Like if I would treat it like an illness, like I put my hand on their back, I would bring my energy down. We'd talk to them in a calm voice. It was literally like magic. I was making them feel better, and it felt so good to make them feel better. And I knew that I wanted this film to bring that to everyone's lives, everyone in the world's lives, because I don't think I'm the only one out there that had that misconception, especially from a parenting front.
Yeah. I think it's very common.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that like it's it's one of those things. It's like out of sight, out of mind, and I think that so much of our society has kind of been programmed that way. Because if I am coughing, you can clearly see that I have
Mhm.
a cold or the flu, or some other variation thereof a disease. But if I'm coming to one of you and saying, "Hey, I am feeling like the room is spinning right now, and I just feel like it's very hard for me to breathe, and I'm very anxious, and I don't know why," it's suck it up, buttercup, and you move on.
Mhm.
And
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.
I'm sorry. I'm laughing because my first reaction is, "Oh no, what can I do to help you?" I found out Pearson was 7 when he first had thoughts of suicide. So I found out when he was very young how I would have reacted as a parent had he been 14 or 15 and finding out. I don't know. I don't know how I would have reacted had he been a girl. I just don't know. I didn't get that. I just had this one child, and I found out in a way that's not why we were there. It just happened. And so I think because he was so young, it was much easier for me to, to just reach out to him. So now literally grown men I'm like, what do you need? Do you need a hug? What do you need? That's kind of, so I do have a different reaction.
You're fine. But it's also coming on the spurts of, misconceptions. I think that, we think that, kids that young can never think about suicide. And that's actually not the case.
Not true.
And you are a living, breathing example of that, having conversations with a 7-year-old about why they don't want to be on the face of this planet anymore. And I think the statistics, if I remember correctly, it's like ages 8 to 12 is it's like 500 suicides a year, if not a little bit more.
Yeah, it's the second leading cause of death for ages 10 through, they have different statistics, but 10 through 24, and then they have 15 through 34. It's the second leading cause of death from 10 to 34. And it's the number one cause of death for our first responders, for policemen, firemen. I mean, it's very prolific right now, and even more so with anxiety and depression just being an issue with the pandemic and everything that's happened with that. It's just this movie came out at a very important time, I think, to help so many people. And I actually love, Jen, I love the way it all came together, and having Abby and Ryan and Dr. Matu in there that make it, and Regina especially. I think the mom's point of view made, for me as a mom who was dealing with it publicly with my son, it just really made a huge difference. So I really think it worked. I mean, I think it's an amazing film that every parent, every school, everybody should see. I mean, I can't go back in time, and I'm the, we did everything. I think that's something that you did say, Jen, in that one of the blog posts that you had written. Pearson was the kid who we fought hard, and he was different than other people, his other peers. He was very different. I mean, he was a very deep thinker. And I mean, I have video of Abby going, and you're 12. I'm like, yeah. I mean,
Years.
Such a special kid.
Yeah. So he was, he was, as he said, he was complicated. So he was, yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
But all the kids in this movie, I think, are amazing for being open enough to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I
so
mean,
courageous.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
It's really interesting too, like watching the kids kind of talk about this in a social media age where you are having to project a certain image in order to be accepted. And if you're not, then you are ostracized, bullied, and I kind of want to shift just a little bit. Abby, you and Ryan both are kind of like the two, I don't want to say notable figures in this movie, but you guys have a persona outside of this movie. You're an anchor. Ryan is a sportscaster who's quite prolific in his field. I'm not going to try and pronounce his last name. It intimidates me.
Lefevre, yeah.
Lefevre?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Spelling is
okay. All right.
Yeah. It's a lot easier to pronounce than to spell.
Yeah, I was like, I looked it up on the call sheet, and I was just like, oh, I'm not even gonna try.
Yeah.
But from someone that is in the public spotlight, what can you kind of talk about? I know the film talks about it, but for the viewers here, can you kind of talk about your battle and your struggle with anxiety in the public spotlight?
Well, it's challenging. I mean, it's challenging for me to talk about it because, and it depends on when I talk about it. I went pretty quiet on it for the last couple of years because I was struggling a little bit too much myself, that if someone would have reacted negatively to me sharing any of my experiences, I would not have been okay. And so I was not strong enough to talk about it for the last couple of years. But at the same time, I feel like I have a responsibility to do whatever I can. There are young women who are watching. There are women my age. There are men my age. There are people who don't know enough about mental health. And for whatever reason, if they choose to listen to me because they see me every morning on TV, then it is part of my duty, in my opinion, to get the word out that someone can look completely healthy on the outside and happy and put together, and on the inside, they're really struggling, and that this is a medical condition, and that I don't have shame about it. That is not why I didn't talk about it. I'm doing to protect myself when I do go quiet on it. But it's nothing to be ashamed of. It is, and I have struggled a lot with telling people who are very close to me the same thing, and there are still people that I need to convince, and that's hard. That's hard when people you really care about and love don't believe that. So it's my job to keep getting the word out so that eventually it's treated like any other illness.
That got me. That got me, Abby. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I think that's I had a phone conversation with Ryan, and I thanked him for telling Pearson's story, and we talked about it. He was not sure about being a part of it because he didn't want to take away from these kids that were speaking and all of that. And I explained how important his voice was, and that there's people who will listen to him just because he's, an athlete and what he does. He has a different people that wouldn't listen to, I mean, the fact that people don't listen to you, Abby, I I dealt with that with my child. I understood it with my child, but as an adult and as a woman, I think we're also told a lot, oh, they're just being hysterical, or quit being. So it just hurts that you can do all the work that you do. You have won awards for your journalism, everything, and that people still can't just accept that it's a condition it's just like it's the same as a physical illness. The body, the mind and the brain are one and the same. Depression's real, and just like cancer, it can kill. I mean, there's nothing different about what it just breaks my heart that as an adult, I kept thinking and hoping that would be easier.
Mm-hmm.
But I also respect that you have to like keep it in at times because you don't feel like you can handle the negativity. So, I mean, I get that.
Yeah. It took took a lot of trial and error for me to figure that out. But yeah, definitely. I mean, these last couple of years have been really rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that.
Right?
I get that. Yeah. I totally get that. I do. I know that. And Jen, I have to say to you, just while I've got you here, I love that you were able that just this process of making this movie was able to change your perspective on what anxiety and depression is, and how you react to it when it's your kids. I mean, it makes a huge difference. Yeah. So
it's made a huge difference in my parenting, the way that I treat myself, because I have anxiety and sadness too. And instead of beating myself up and, abusing myself, basically, I can be kinder and use a kinder voice, and it helps. It helps me. So thank you for saying that. And I'm just so glad.
No, I think it's great.
I hear all of your voices in my head all the time, guiding me. And
I just quote
everyone in the country, everyone in the world does, because it's made my life better.
I quote Pearson most of the time. I don't have, I quote his speeches. I don't really, I think that his voice, living in the midst of all that, everything that he said at those things that he would do, I think those were just the most important things, because he was in the middle of it. And I don't know what it's like to be a 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old living with that. I just know what it's, right now I'm a survivor of suicide loss. So everything that I thought I had figured out when it came to my own anxiety and depression issues has shifted. So it's very different. And then I'm kind of lost again. There's not really we have a good group here in this Kansas City area that of support with moms who've lost someone, but it's, I know that at the beginning of the podcast, you'd mentioned how my son had died. And one of the things that I do correct people on all the time is that he didn't commit anything. He died by suicide. Because that was one of the things he said to me. It was the pain. The pain was just so great, Mom. So when I feel that way, it's just this pain that I can't stop. And so it's a matter of just having being open about this conversation of mental health and how you feel, and having people that you can trust who understand what you need in that moment. If you're not okay, who you can turn to. You have to have those people you can turn to talk to, and know that it's okay no matter what, and that they will be there to help you with whatever you need. I mean, I think that's one of the important things. And like I said, the film also does that. It has their friends that are supporting them. And I think that's great. I mean, I think that's one of the important messages in this film. Even though it's in all the other films too, with the friends helping each other and they're just like you. This one it's really important to have that support and having someone who gets it, especially for a teenager, but also for us and for adults. It's just really important. Mm-hmm. So, I love that you're doing this on Twitch. My son would do this. He'd do stuff on Twitch and play games, and his friends are all on. So yeah.
Well, yeah, no, one of the things that, so much to respond to, so much to deconstruct real quick. But, one of the things that, like I said, I think this film, dealing with anxiety and dealing with the correlation of how it relates to depression was such a fascinating thing to debunk and kind of really dive into, but also I think when the subject of anxiety, anytime someone says I'm anxious, it automatically has this negative connotation. And this film explores the variations between good anxiety and bad anxiety. And I'm wondering if I can open the floor for you guys to kind of briefly explain the difference and how actually anxiety can be healthy for us to have.
Should I take that one or?
Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, Abby.
No.
Okay. Well, Abby, you talked about you narrated the animation in the movie. I thought that was so good. Just a simple way of describing that, you know, as a species, we need anxiety to survive, and we needed it. Really needed it when we were like running away from tigers and things in the jungle. Our anxiety would kick in to help us, you know, flee from the tiger, fight the tiger, or hide from the tiger. And we still need anxiety to give us warning signs when we're confronted with things that are threatening to us. In fact, I was so surprised in interviewing Dr. Mathieu. He actually treats kids that don't have enough anxiety in their lives. So we need it to survive, and we need it to function. But when it becomes too much and it gets in the way of our functioning, when we're so anxious that we can't function normally, that's when it becomes a disorder. And it is a spectrum, like you said, Josh. It's like there's a normal amount, there's not enough, and then there's normal, and then it becomes too much when it prevents us from functioning normally, is how I understand it and how we tried to portray it in the film.
It's super accurate. The way it's explained in the film to me is just perfect.
I agree.
Someone in the comments loves Hillary. I just have to tell you that.
Aww.
I don't. It's
was it my husband?
KCO417. I don't know. So there's that.
I love Hillary.
Love you too. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I think that part of my experience though helps. I have a different insight to it. I think so with the anxiety, when you're just talking about the differences in normal and healthy anxiety that we all need, which I didn't know that either about people not having enough.
We should have mentioned that in the film. I thought that was
Evel Knievel did not have enough. I mean, I feel like those kind of people don't have enough. But now that I've had this was, you know, obviously trauma for me, that anxiety, that fight or flight response is much different for me than it was before. And that's something I've had to actually really come to understand, because I have different triggers. So now I have PTSD to add to my list of, you know, everything. So my fight or flight response is very, you know, I'm quick to do it sometimes. And so I can have, my anxiety is very different now than it was before.
How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
So
I'm wondering if that's and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe you guys don't know, but is it like, do you find that like because I'm assuming all three of you are parents, correct?
Yeah.
I am not a parent, so I don't know the answer to this. But do you ladies find that there is a heightened level of that good anxiety in being a parent that kind of like kicks in with your children?
It did for
I don't
me.
know if it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep you up at night kind of anxiety.
Yeah.
Well, like when they're little, you're worried about, you have anxiety over, oh no, did I put, like we were just talking before we started, I had a 10-month-old with me yesterday. I'm like, oh no, did I put him in his crib the right way? I can't remember. Does he go down on his back, on his I mean, I'm just those little worries that you have as a parent. Oh no, did I buckle the seatbelt right on the car seat? I don't know. But yeah, I think there's more anxiety just being a parent.
Yeah, definitely heightened, I think, good anxiety, but also probably I bet most mothers would feel like they live with anxiety disorder.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of anxiety that goes with being responsible for another little life that's completely a reliance upon you to survive. But I think that's how we survive, is because mothers have that in their DNA to feel that for their child.
Oh, yeah. I'm told there's a healthy amount somewhere that's less than what I currently have on that. But yeah, currently it's an unhealthy anxiety.
Well, and I don't know if that's honestly, I don't know, Abby. I mean, like, I know that I got accused of having too much anxiety. I mean, that I was being too, when I tried to advocate for him at school or whatever he needed. I mean, I was dismissed so many times. So I don't know, like, I did have anxiety as we became to understand what he was living with. And, the anger of being dismissed constantly was really hard. And that's probably been the hardest thing for me, honestly, is to not lash out at everybody that ignored me when I told them. He was one of the first kids at that age, so young, to speak so publicly, I think, ever. He was in 5th grade when he started speaking, and I don't even ask how that happened. We don't, I don't know. But it was just really amazing to me that the fight just to get, healthcare, to get appointments, to get anything. I mean, it was so hard, but to get people to believe me that this was really happening, that was that to me, when I look back, is the most disturbing thing, that people didn't believe me.
Well,
and
it's a stigma.
They're afraid.
There's a stigma around it. Don't you think, Hillary?
Right. Well, that was his message from 5th grade, was no stigma, no shame. That was his, in 5th grade, he decided that was his thing. No stigma, no shame.
But the stigma, he went systemic almost. I mean, I have a family member who's trying to get a younger family member mental health help and can't via Medicaid. Now that's a systemic issue. It's treating a disease like it's not a disease, right? Would you tell a kid with cancer that they can't?
Right. Oh yeah. Right. Pearson's hot button right there. That's right. Well, and honestly, mental health parity. Now I'm going to get into the advocacy part of this, because that's probably more my thing. Mental health parity is a thing. And I don't know where your family member lives. But I know that our senator, we're in Missouri, where I am anyway. Our senator was one of those who, Roy Blunt, it was one of his big things, was this mental health parity, so that insurance companies would treat mental illness the same way that they do physical illness when it comes to paying out. And we, in this state at least, didn't have that enforced until just, I think, this last year, they finally passed that. And it was more than just paying out the same amount. It was also meaning that from what I've been told and understand from the mental health professionals I work with, is that they had a lot more paperwork they had to fill out, that it didn't allow them to see as many patients as they could, whereas other doctors and healthcare professionals didn't have to do as much of this busy work. They all keep records, of course, but they had to go an extra mile for theirs. So we now have that, but I don't know how many states have that enforced. And that is a really big problem. And with Medicaid, I mean, Abby, let me know where they are. I can help you. I can help you reach out to somebody.
That's fun, because if it's that recent too, then that person may need to revisit. So thank you. We'll chat.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the goals that is the goal of this film, is to help end the dangerous stigma. And the Mayo Clinic says that the stigma actually actively prevents people from getting the help that they need.
Yes, it does.
And then when that person finally does go get the help they need, to learn that they wouldn't be backed by their health insurance or even our government. And that's disappointing. So that's, hopefully our film will get out there and educate people in the system, as well as people that live with and support people that live with anxiety disorder and depression.
Yeah, I hope so too. I mean, that is our appointment. Pearson was begging me for an appointment. I have emails that go back to like November. He turned 14 in December. He died in January. His appointment was for 10 days later. We couldn't get him in. I've learned things since that I've been able to help others that have reached out for help, because I do get asked a lot about that. But there are programs at a lot of community mental health centers. Here where I live is Comprehensive Mental Health, is the community mental health center that's for this area that I'm in Kansas City. And if somebody's having a crisis, they have emergency services for youth with suicide prevention. But these are things that we don't. So I'm a small business owner. I own a salon. So if someone comes in and tells me they want a blunt shag, I'm like, no, that's not right. And it's my responsibility to explain to them the difference between blunt and wispy and shaggy and whatever, and explain to them what they do need or want. Whereas in the healthcare system, a lot of times we don't know what a special, what is it? Is there a difference between a counselor and a therapist? Is there a difference between a case manager, the psychologist, the psychiatrist, what do we need to do? Who do we need to see? And that's a huge part of this as well. Like, who do we go to? And do these people have a background in helping kids who have these thoughts? And will they still be at the same place we're going to, 6 months from now? Or do we have to start all over with another one? And that was getting care is really hard. It's a lot harder than people realize.
Yes, it is.
It's not that simple. If I had cancer, I would have a treatment plan within a week or two and be all set up and ready to go. But my son wanted to die and I couldn't get him in. And that's really sad. I mean, that's the problem we have, because it wasn't like we didn't try. We couldn't do it. But if you don't know the ins and the outs and who to call, that's the information we need those places, the mental health care facilities, to tell us who to call, what to do, what to ask for. Just calling the suicide prevention hotline, while that's great for a lot of people, for some, it's not going to be that help. It's not going to be as helpful. They don't all have. It wasn't helpful for my son. I know he told me that. He did call a few times, and it's still a great resource and it needs to be there. But I think that we still have some disconnection that we need to make. But the film makes I think it's a huge step forward in explaining what it is. And I think the conversations that can happen from watching this movie are absolutely amazing and great, that will help so many.
I think a lot of some of the things that we, the reason why mental health is the way that it is within our society goes back to some of the things that Abby was talking about a little bit earlier, in that it's this thing that is kind of, masqueraded in shame. Like, it's just wrapped up in that shame. And here in the comments too, KCO 417, the same one that loves you, Hillary, says it prevents people from admitting that they even need help. And it is true, because I'm the only guy on this call, so like I can't I have to be the voice of an entire gender. But from a man's perspective, and kind of growing up around that old school thought pattern of you can't never be broken, like, put a Band-Aid on it, suck it up, move on. And it's like, no, like I actually like have like really deep things that like I felt like I've had thoughts when I was a teenager that like felt like Pearson. Like I felt like I didn't want to be here anymore. Like, why am I alive? Like, this pain is like so deep, and it just constantly feels like every day is another grain of salt in this wound called life. And it took me years to really kind of come to grasp with it. And I ended up turning to the church, Christianity, and kind of, gave my life over to the Lord and kind of started walking out a lot of those things. And it's not you talk about Pearson calling the suicide hotline and trying to get, help via, therapy. But it's never, sometimes it's not that easy. And I think we overcomplicate it, and we overcomplicate it because I think a lot of what you guys talk about in this movie is that there's a lot of ignorance. And there's always that rumor. We talked a lot about like the physical ailments being like cancer. Like there's all those rumors that like scientists have discovered the cure to cancer, but because of how big pharmaceutical companies are, how great that market is, we're never going to see that maybe in this lifetime. I think that's also the same way that we view mental health, is like, oh, well, if we can consistently just get people to wait or, continue to be on like all these like different kinds of medicine, like we'll continue to just kind of fester the problem and allow it to stall and kind of continue to grow.
I think, yeah, there's that. There's also so many things with social media. You were mentioning that earlier. There's a lot of misinformation out there as well about it, or how you can fix it, so to speak. Yes, you can do meditations and try to work on some cognitive behavioral therapy things to help retrain the brain. And yes, that can help. What they don't say is that it takes so much work, so much practice, every single night doing the same thing. It helped me trying to help my son. I realized I could manage my anxiety by doing these meditative deep breathing exercises to engage the parasympathetic system. Don't know that it helped him as much, but it helped me as an adult. And but it took nightly. We did it nightly for months. I mean, it was a lot of work, and people give up. We want those quick fixes and we want to see results immediately, and it's hard. So on the other flip side of that, we have people that turn to addictions like drugs and alcohol to try to self-medicate as well, because those are more understandable to them than some of the pharmaceuticals might be, or the other things. So, I mean, mental health really encompasses quite a bit more than just, what we've been talking about. There's so much more to it, but I think that basic understanding, like what the film puts out there, is super important. And yes, finding something that you can turn to that can help you, like you were saying, how you turned to Christianity, and that helped you so much. That was, I mean, having those places and those where you feel safe and where you can learn how to heal is important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And I think what we say in the film, and Abby does such a nice job of this, is that you really have to have a toolbox, because one tool will work during one time period and maybe stop working, and you have to go to another tool. And whether it's therapy or exercise or diet or meditation or volunteering, I know Ryan talked about volunteering, or religion, or whatever it is. And sometimes we need medication, but I think that's what we try to get across in the film, that it's things work different for different people at different times, and you just got to keep trying and trying and trying until you find the thing that works.
Yeah, it's never going to be a one-time fix all, because what works for me might not necessarily work for you, Jen, or what works for Abby might not necessarily work for Hillary, and vice versa. And it is all about trial and error. That's why when you get into counseling and therapy, it's all about finding the person that's going to fit you, and it's actually going to be a good fit for breakthrough. Sometimes, going back to religion, you might not necessarily fit in with the first church you go to, or second, or it might take you 7-8 tries. And then we lost Abby. And then, you get into like things like medicine and stuff like that, and like you have to like try different things. And so and again, like you were just saying, Jen, like it is a matter of always, like, every season of your life is going to constantly be throwing at you different things. And so you need to be prepared to um, kind of, understand that what worked before might not necessarily work again. And you might need
Well,
to approach things from a different perspective.
and it takes time each time you try it. Like if you try a new medicine, it takes so much time that you have to give it to see if it's actually working. And I just experienced that myself before Christmas. I was put on a new medication and it did not go well. And I don't think people talk about, like, there's a lot of people afraid of medicine, especially when it comes to depression and like the antidepressants and the side effects. And there's all those black box warnings about suicidal thoughts. And I actually we're fairly certain Pearson had some of that from the medication he was taking. So we know that was probably part of what happened with him. But for me, I experienced that for myself for the first time ever, right before Christmas. And it was, if I weren't, what's the word I want to use? If I wouldn't have been Pearson's mom who had to do all this work for him, I don't know that I would have recognized that it was my medicine doing it. I don't know that I would have understood it. And I don't think we talk enough about that. What is that? What does that present as? Like when you're taking a medicine, what is actually making it a bad medicine for you? What is it? What does a suicidal thought look like? You don't just wake up and go, oh, I had one. It was insidious. It was different. I really urge all parents, if they do put their kids on medicine, to keep a paper calendar, not something on you need to be able to see that bigger picture, but making sure if there are any changes in their normal routine. Did they eat? Did they sleep well? Did they wake up? Just little notes so that you can look over, the whole gamut, look at a month's view and see, oh, they started having bad dreams, that, like things that are different.
That's something
they don't give you that. They don't put that in your toolbox when they give your kid medicine. And with my son, he was 6'1" with a size 13 foot when he died. He was in 8th grade. So he was this giant. And I feel sometimes that they would think, like how we give children their Tylenol based on their weight. Pearson's brain was not fully developed. So we shouldn't be giving him an adult-sized dose of medicine when his brain's still, growing. So I think there's a lot of things that do need to be done with more care by the doctors when they're handing out medicine. And my big thing is letting people know that your primary care doctor is not a mental health professional. They don't understand the medication the same way. And a psychiatrist will handle things differently than they will. And they have reasonings behind that, which I actually understand and agree with. But yeah, there's a lot to it. But I do definitely recommend if you ever have a child who needs medicine, that you keep a paper calendar and so you can see it and track it. And for girls, there's so many other things they have to track. And you can kind of see if there's a pattern and see if it's really, like, there's so much more to this, I think, as a parent dealing with your child, doing that. Sorry, I really wanted to put out that whole thing with the keeping track of the medicine, because medicine gets a really bad reputation. And trust me, my son, I get it. We had a lot of bad side effects from medicine for him. And, but that's the reality is that people, they prescribe it. And, so being aware of what they do and don't do, and knowing that if you can get the right one, it can really make a huge difference. So.
And Abby, I love, Abby, you shared in the movie about how conversations with your friends really helped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it still does, and I have a tribe of people that I can turn to now. But I will say 10 years ago, the same people that I turn to now didn't understand mental health or the struggles I was going to 10 years ago, and didn't necessarily believe that what I was going through was real until some of them experienced it themselves through other things that happen in life. And so I have a lot of empathy for young people who are going through this, whose friends may not have yet. And I think that's part of why this movie is so necessary, is to show that, there are people who go through this, and then there are people who don't, or maybe who haven't yet. And you still need to understand each other, because there are a lot of people who are very fortunate and who may never go through deep depressive episodes, or deal with clinical depression. And but it is still important for those people to know that some people do, and that it is real. But yeah, I'm very fortunate now that I do have people in my life who believe me, whether or not they've gone through the same struggles or not, or who believe me because now they've been through it themselves. And both are equally helpful and powerful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I really want viewers right now, if you guys haven't checked it out, the movie's called Just Like You, Anxiety and Depression. You guys can stream it right now on Apple. We'll have a link for you guys in the descriptions below. But where can people find out? Where can people find you guys on social medias, and more about Just Like Films, the Pearson Project, and anything else you guys think would be good resources?
So you can find our films that we distributed, Just Like You, Anxiety and Depression, through Gravitas Ventures, which was the first time that we've ever distributed a film in a traditional Hollywood manner, which is extremely exciting. So they have us on iTunes and Amazon Prime. Pretty much any platform you can think of, we're on it. So that's really, really exciting. But the rest of our films were funded by donors, so we stream them for free on our website, which is www.justlikeyouFilms.org. That's justlikeyouFilms.org. And we stream, we have burn, cancer, Down syndrome, autism, cleft lip and palate, port wine stain birthmark, facial paralysis, type 1 diabetes, anxiety and depression. The anxiety and depression is not free, but the rest of them are free. And we're in the process of working on food allergies, when we have a little trailer on that one too. We're really excited about that film because we're, for the first time, we're going to do a docudrama. So we're going to actually have a narrative thread that runs through the documentary. And we're working with August Maturo, who is an actor that did Girl Meets World for the Disney Channel, and also Ava, his co-star. And we're going to take that film and also make a virtual reality component of that. So that's also very exciting. So, and when you go to our website, all of our social media platforms will be at the bottom of the website, but we're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and LinkedIn.
Right. Well, August Maturo was also in Slapface, which you guys should check out on Shudder. Great movie.
Oh yeah, they won an award at a film festival in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
I think he did for like best actor in a horror film.
Yeah. He truly makes that movie. So if you guys want to see a good movie,
I've seen it. I saw it.
horror,
awesome.
horror, anxiety, bullying, but with a supernatural full core twist called Slapface.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, where can people find more information about the Pearson Project as well?
So most of our information actually these days is found on our social media, which is the Pearson Project. It's on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We do have a website. It's the-pierson-project.org, and his name is Pierson. I also post quite a bit on my own social media, and that's Piers Mom, PIERSMOM, and that's on Instagram. Been doing more reels to explain what it's really like, and I've been working a little bit with. I'd worked with a rapper named King ISO. We've been working together a little bit on just his group therapy tour kind of thing, talking about being more open about mental health and mental illness. So hopefully I'll get a little bit more of him that's going to be showing up on those social media posts. But that's where I'm at, basically. I've really been focusing on the grassroots stuff here in our area. That was one of Pearson's big things. Why can't we get more help right here where he needed it? So I work a lot with comprehensive mental health, and Jen was there. There was a building they dedicated a building to my son for his advocacy. And so I've been doing a lot of work with them this year, trying to help.
They donated money too. They donated money to the movie. They were the reason we were able to add Virginia and Rashawn and Braden.
Yeah, they were huge fans of my son. He spoke at their events. So we support them, and Just Like You Films, that's two of the food allergy movie, and Pearson also had that. So there's so much good that Jen does with these movies for kids. I just will, having a child who spoke for children, I think they're great, and we will always be a supporter of that. And like I said, his friends, just still trying to make sure his friends and his classmates are still okay, because we lost another student from his school that next year. So we've really been keeping it kind of local for the most part. And I do have a great support group of moms who are also survivors who've lost their children here in Kansas City. And so we do a project called The Faces of Suicide, because they all lived, they're all loved, and they all matter. So we try to just help heal from this. But ultimately our goal is we don't want anyone else joining our club. It's exclusive. Yeah. It's very exclusive. We don't want anyone else.
That's awesome. Abby, did you want to close out and give out any social media?
I don't, I do some on social media, more from a personal side, but if there are any women, especially who are watching, even maybe women of childbearing age, or just in general, young women as well. I've done a couple of long form series for our station. One is the fourth trimester. So if you go to www.fox4kc.com, search in the search bar the fourth trimester, you'll find I think there are about 14 stories in there. The struggle of those first 3 months after becoming a new mom, and I'm hoping to add more to that in the near future. And then also I did a whole another 14 stories on body image, which is, and social media, and and the media's representation of bodies, and do a lot of myth busting in there, as well as some talking to scientists and doctors about composition of bodies and why we are shaped the way we are shaped. So that is also fox4kc.com. If you search Real Me KC in the search bar, it's not exclusive to Kansas City. So if there are people watching, who are from other areas, I encourage anybody who suffers from body image issues, or who knows someone who does, to check that out as well, because it was helpful for me, and helpful for a lot of women that I know as well.
That's awesome. All right. Well, one more time, the movie is called Just Like You, Anxiety and Depression. You guys can find it on Amazon and Apple for rent, and we'll provide all the links in the descriptions below. But if you or someone you know is watching this and or listening to this, and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, please understand that you are not alone, and that you do have value. We encourage you guys to check out victimsandvillains.net/hope, where you guys can get our mental health resource library as a start to get your healing. And victimsandvillains.net, you can find more podcasts like this, along with movie reviews, our links to our social media, Patreon, and our film festival lineup for Horrific Hope this year. Thank you guys, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. Thank you.